Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Yellowjackets. This is my second video on season 1 of the show. It's going to cover episodes 4 through 7, which are titled, just for the record, Bear Down, Blood Hive, Saints, and No Compass. Obviously with these bundled reviews, I'm not going to talk about every little scene or every little thing that happened. But this is the idea is to give you a check-in now, sort of 2/3 into the season, and see how I'm feeling versus that first batch of 3 episodes. And by and large, I would say, if nothing else, before I go any further, I'll say that I am more into the show now than I was the last time I spoke to you, which is good. It's what I hoped for. It's what I expected based on the recommendations and what other people had seen the show had said to me. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of developments with the stuff in the 1996 part of the show with them. I think they'd found the cabin last time I spoke to you, but obviously there's been a lot of stuff since then. Reveals about Shauna being pregnant. Thaisa wanting to actually look for something, to escape and save themselves rather than just waiting for rescue to show up. Because by this point, it's been a little bit of time. If anything, it's almost. I almost felt like by the time she finally said to, I think it's her girlfriend, she says to first that she wants to go looking for help. I think, if anything, I'm surprised it took that long for one of them to suggest it. Not necessarily to actually implement it, because obviously it's quite a trek and they don't know how far they're going to be going. They could be, but there's always that chance, right, that it's only a couple of miles until there's a road and something to get help from, versus possibly miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. How dangerous is this land specifically? Because they don't even know exactly where they are. Maybe they can make some guesses based on the route of their plane. But regardless, that's kind of where we are in episode 7, which is the last one I watched, is kind of their attempt to travel and leave, and kind of a group forms. We have Thaisa, obviously. Misty seemingly jealous because the coach seems to like the bravery of Thaisa. Comes out because she tries to touch him at one point, and he kind of just says, look, I have feelings too, but it's too dangerous. And you kind of get what he's doing. Obviously he doesn't, right? It's very clear he doesn't, but he's trying to, just rather than shoot her completely down, is trying to keep the peace by not upsetting her, but just sort of saying, giving her a reason why they can't do anything, right? And why we have to just be strong, yada yada. And Misty goes off in an attempt to kind of, and everyone else knows she's into him, because the way they're all standing awkwardly, she's saying, I'm going to go with them. So we got them. We have Thaisa's girlfriend, the goalie girl, whose name I still don't know, but luckily I don't need to know it anymore, because she seems to be dead by the end of this episode, so that's okay. And then some red shirts. They're not complete red shirts, but they're red shirts in the sense that there's clearly an A tier of the characters that we're getting to know and are vital to the plot, most of whom are the ones who make it into 2021, and then there's the B tier, which okay, they're not making it, probably. They're fodder, they're possibly food later on, but so there's a bit of a difference there. But one of the girls is Lottie, is a girl who was kind of around in the first few episodes, but got a lot more stuff in this last batch, which was that she seems to have premonitions. And I was theorizing back in the first 3 episodes, is there going to be a supernatural element to this? It felt like it could go that way, and lo and behold, in this batch of episodes there was a seance where Lottie, the girl who seems to have been having premonitions from a young age, and it seemed to save her parents from, and herself from a car crash when she was a little kid, seems to get possessed during the seance, and that's kind of a big moment. And probably the biggest thing is when they find this little biplane or whatever it is near this cabin, probably in episode 4, because it's soon after they found it, is there's a line here where she says the island, or not the island, sorry, this is me getting back to Lost, because this made me think of Lost, because as much as there's obviously some parallels you can compare it to Lost with the plane crash and being lost, I think tonally it feels very different from Lost, which is good, you know, because it means like you don't really feel the similarities that much, even though there's technically some parallels. But the one thing that made me think of Lost is there's a line here saying, it didn't want to make them leave, or they didn't want to let them leave. And that comes up again in episode 7 when they're debating about like the dangers of going forward, because they find this kind of stream that's kind of tinged red, and that was one of the dreams that she had. And they bring up that she said the forest didn't want to let them leave, and this Thaisa gets really angry at this and is upset that they're entertaining this silly idea. She's like, the forest doesn't care, it's just a forest, we need to try and leave, yada yada. Obviously by the end of the episodes where the wolves attack them, maybe there is kind of some force that's not wanting to let them leave, and that brings in the idea of the supernatural stuff. When they go to do the seance, there's already symbols like in the positions that they put the candles on, which does make me think, is there some kind of like witch coven or something out in the forest? Like that's just because of the layout that made me think of that. But the idea of the location not wanting to let them leave is very Lost. Obviously I expect it'll go on different paths and do different things with it, but that general idea, I couldn't help but think I Lost there when that was uttered. But it is interesting though, and I think the stuff in 1996 has gotten more interesting the deeper they get into all the minutiae, and now possibly the idea that it's more than just being lost in the woods somewhere, that there's some other forces at play here, whether that just be a group of people or something supernatural. So but yeah, the other things like Natalie and Travis, obviously there's a hint that they had something based on the 2021 stuff, and seeing them be the two that can actually use the gun and go hunting, I did laugh a little bit when the coach is training and seeing who's good at shooting, and someone says, shouldn't we be preserving our ammo here, like shouldn't we not be wasting it on like target practice? And he says, I mean, normally yeah, but luckily the guy that owned this cabin was like stalking for the apocalypse or something to that effect. And it's not a bad thing, like I get it, but I did almost feel the writers like pausing the show, right? Pause everything, look at the viewer directly in the eye and say, do not ask us again or any more ever again about how much ammo they have. It's not important, they've got enough, just roll with it. Which is fine, like I'm not complaining, but it was such like I could almost feel the writers reaching through the screen and being like, okay, don't ask us about this now, we've explained it. But yeah, so they have some relatively sweet moments. I mean, episode 4 was largely about that training, and that was the one that kind of delved into Natalie's past, where it sort of hints maybe you think she shot her father, but then by the end when you see the flashback, and he's this ultra controlling guy, calls her a slut for just having a boy over, and he ends up accidentally shooting himself in the head after he takes the gun off of her. But that's what gives her hesitation to use the gun, but then she sort of goes to prove that she can do it and so on. Like I thought that stuff was pretty solid. I liked that they were fleshing out some of these characters and kind of giving us more of a sense of the idea that we can get flashbacks to previous, like before 1996 as well, for some of them anyway, is quite interesting, because we did the same thing with Misty in episode 3. And I thought that added a lot to her motivations, and I think the same was true for Natalie when we got to episode 4. So yeah, the other thing is that the premonition girl also sees Thaisa eating dirt in one of her like dreams or visions, and it's like obviously when she asked Thaisa about it, she's like, no, of course not. Like what? Go shut up. But then it's actually in the 2021 part where we actually see kind of something happen, where she just kind of wakes up outside and she's been clearly eating dirt, and it's obviously disgusting. But in episode 7, seemingly maybe for the first time, she seems to like wake up somewhere unexpected, like she's been sleepwalking, or in this case just to say sleep climbing, because she's up a tree. If not, someone else is moving her up there, or does she have an alternate personality that's coming out? I don't know. That's a crazy... I'm jumping off the deep end with that. I have no basis for that as of yet. But just the idea that she wakes up, she doesn't know how she got there, and it's actually that's let the wolves attack, because she was meant to be watching. She was meant to be on guard. So, you got these things. So, yeah, and then just the logistics of just like Jackie at one point like doesn't seem to be helping out as much. He's not as good as this at the wilderness stuff as anyone else, and people are starting to notice. So Shauna kind of has to try and help her figure out what her purpose is. Shauna's whole subplot as well about trying to give herself an abortion rather than like admit to Jackie like what's going on, and obviously not to mention the fact that having a baby out in the woods is kind of a big deal. In fact, one of the things I was thinking when it comes up she's pregnant, I was like, oh, is this her daughter? Was her daughter born out here? And then of course I did the maths in my head and went, oh wait, no, I can't. It's not possible. Like if this kid is born, which I'm not convinced will be, or if the kid survives once it is born, again, possible dark potential here. Like it would be, and it's mid-20s in 2021 basically. So yeah, curious to see where that goes, but seemingly the attempted abortion, which is a very emotional scene with her and Thaisa, and it was kind of interesting because her and Thaisa didn't seem to have a whole lot together yet, but then they had this shared secret because Thaisa noticed like what she was going through, so that kind of bonded them a little bit, which made it a bit more exciting in the 2021 part of the show for them to kind of like get together. And that's something that really happened over the course of these last couple of episodes, is that the 2021 versions of the characters started to really work together and have scenes together again. Obviously there was a lot of Misty with Natalie before, and Misty's kind of like, oh, she's spying on them, she's got a camera that she snuck into a gift in Natalie's place, but she's doing her own thing right now. She's kidnapped the supposed journalist who's actually working for Thaisa, and she's like, I'm scary, you need to be scared of me. And I believe her. She is concerning. That's all going on, and that's intriguing. And it's kind of nice to see the rest of them working without her, because as much as she is narratively interesting, right? Because she is this wild card that'll do things for her own sake, and she'll mess with the others, and that creates obviously a lot of really easy drama and tension and spontaneity. It's actually very nice to have her away from the other three characters whilst they're kind of together for the first time properly in the show, and they're who's blackmailing us, who knows about our secrets, and they track the money, and it's this guy, and there's a lot of nice little bits of personality in some of this stuff, just kind of like Shauna being surprised at how much money $50,000 actually looks like when it's in $100 bills. And it's like, oh, there's like, okay, where do we put the tracker then? Because I thought there'd be a lot more money to hide it under. And sure enough, like, obviously it doesn't go very well, and the guy gets away, but it does seem to be a guy, and there's some hints and whatnot of what's going on, and but all this, Natalie's convinced it's connected to Travis's potential murder. It seems to be that there was candles making the symbol, whatever it is, at his murder site, and that kind of freaks them all out a little bit. So, like, them all having to come together because of something kind of prodding at them, and pursuing their past lives. And we've seen to various extents how they handle being asked about this. I think Thaisa probably has the biggest moment where she like tells that rich woman to piss off. A couple of episodes in this batch. That's like one of the stronger elements. Obviously, so much of her plot's been her determination to, whether or not to stay on this campaign. She was almost going to drop out. And notably, not only does she see like her own family looking at her, but she also sees this creepy long-haired dude with no eyes, which obviously is important. And it was the sort of thing where I did notice this guy in the opening titles. Although, no, I think in the opening titles he's standing in a forest, so I think we're going to see him in the 1996 period as well. But he pops up, and there's so many of these little things as well, which is the only thing about doing these episodes in batches like this, where I'm just kind of like, like going through like the rush of all this stuff that's going on, is like, this is such a quick little moment, but it's very creepy. It's probably one of the creepiest moments of the show, and it's just enough to say this is kind of a horror show. Like, yeah, I wasn't necessarily getting that from. Like, obviously the cannibal stuff in the first episode feels kind of like a horror movie, but other than that, I'd say the first 3 episodes didn't have a whole lot of horror. Obviously it had the high drama of the crash and the action of that, and there's some sort of drama, maybe some slight thriller elements to the present day stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily describe it, a lot of it as horror, but as we're going into it more, both timelines are starting to introduce some horror elements. the wolves attack in episode 7, and like this idea that they can't leave is starting to feel very horror-esque. You know, it's a little bit Blair Witch even, this idea that we can't leave this section of land. And that's interesting, and that begs the question, why and who's doing this and all these other things. There's hints when they're talking about this time period in life when they're together in episode 7 about like, you know, I thought we were going to be like compulsed, you know, because Natalie almost shoots the guy and like, oh, I thought we were going to go away for murder there, and Natalie says, oh, it's not like we haven't done something worse or something similar in the past. So it's kind of like stoking the ideas of whatever. Which, on that subject, to jump over to the Jackie kind of side of things, who seems to be reading the journal. She's stolen Shauna's journal at the end of the episode 7, so it seems like she knows the truth now. But there's some, whenever, I think one of the more interesting parts of Shauna's story, because obviously she's with this new guy, and they're having this affair, and some of it's kind of entertaining. I think the stuff that I like the most about this is when she's like, oh, let's do some like typical teenage things, because I kind of missed out on like regular high school stuff because of what I went through. And then presumably, and she's not really told him exactly what she went through, and it's not until her daughter says like, but he has the internet, like surely he can just look you up, so maybe he does know some stuff. I mean, I speculated right from the start that he actually knows a lot more than he's letting on, and I'm still thinking that might be the case. But, you know, it's stuff like that. And then I think the stuff that I really like, probably my favorite just solo character stuff for Shauna, is when her daughter catches her with the guy, and then they have the conversation. And there's the funny part where her daughter tries to blackmail her, and she just kind of like, you know, talks her out of it by threatening all the things that will come with a divorce and everything else. But it's when they're talking about Jackie. It's like the night she catches her, like when they're still kind of out, and she thought, you know, Shauna mentions that her and her dad have got a lot of baggage, and she's like, you mean Jackie? And they can't, you know, her talking to her daughter about Jackie and what Jackie means to her, I think was a little interesting. Especially at one point, you know, I think, yeah, it's when she goes to like Jackie's parents for dinner with the husband, and they're, the parents keep talking about Jackie, and she's kind of dancing around things a little bit. That scene again got really interesting, and it's funny because obviously, like we know her husband's cheating on him, right? We know that's going on, and we know that that's kind of in part why she has been motivated to do the same. But there's this like genuine moment here where Jeff sticks up for her and talks about how great Shauna is, because they keep kind of like they're kind of like, I get that they're a bit screwed up because their daughter, like, you know, seemingly died after this plane crash, you know, when she was a teenager. But they kind of keep talking about Jackie being this great person and the perfect girl, and how Shauna's not as good. And there's a lot of little digs or a lot of little things where there's you know, just some hidden, or not even hidden, but like just really blatant insults and things like that. And Jeff ends up sticking up for her, and it's kind of like, wait, like, that was oddly kind of sweet, despite the fact that we didn't see him with the woman in the hotel room, but we saw him leaving a hotel with a woman, and he's lying about where he's going all the time. So, I mean, you know, we're pretty sure he's cheating on her. It added a bit more layers to the relationship beyond just, oh, they're unhappy and they're both cheating on each other, which I kind of appreciate. And it's not to say that I feel bad for him now because of what Sean is doing, because it's not like he's any less guilty of something, but it's just, you know, it's something a little bit extra there that makes them feel a bit more like fully fledged characters, as opposed to just kind of archetypes, which, you know, arguably they could have been to an extent before. So speaking of emotion kind of coming out, like Natalie fighting with them in episode 7 and wanting to solve Travis's murder and saying that he wouldn't kill himself. Like, again, it was one of the first moments where I really felt true, genuine kind of emotion coming from that character, or maybe more like, what I should phrase that as, I felt like she was garnering my sympathy for the first time, because Juliette Lewis is a very grumpy presence, right? That's just what she's and I've always thought this, right? She's been like this her entire career, but she's always had like a very grumpy demeanor, like all the time on her face. So I think it was actually very effective when she broke down in episode 7, because all of a sudden I kind of felt like some of the real emotion behind it, and it was kind of like touching the other two, talking about her and saying like, we've both got families, we've both kind of like found some life after what happened to us. Natalie's kind of screwed up, doesn't really have anyone, and she's kind of maybe getting close to, you know, Kevin Detective again, but like even that kind of goes off the rails a little bit by now because she stole his gun for the night. She's kind of used him, you know, she intentionally used him and only went on a date with him to get the autopsy report of Travis. You know, so there's definitely like, you know, like they all have elements where like clearly they've done things, and that kind of adds to the overall mystery of the show as well, because a big part of the show right from the start has been, what did they do to survive? And you assume that it's stuff they're not proud of, that it's stuff that they are hell-bent and never revealing to the public. And so this idea that the characters, yeah, obviously have things that they've done that we're going to see as bad, that they're driven to, and they do morally grey things, but if they can get us to a point where we're kind of rooting for them anyway, like any good kind of, I wouldn't even say anti-heroes, because they're not necessarily anti-heroes per se, but you know, where you have that morally grey side to them, but you can still understand why they were pushed to that, and then sympathize them and want them to have like a happier ending, or get better through it, or whatever it may be. In fact, one of the moments when they're talking about Natalie, this is Thaisa and Shauna, obviously. Like I think Thaisa at one point said after what she did for us, like we owe this at the very least. Again, maybe implying that, you know, Natalie's very instrumental in like getting them out of the hellhole that they're in the main, you know, 1996 part of the story. So they're stoking a lot of fires there, and I'm enjoying that generally. Thaisa's whole like, you know, waking up and sleepwalking and eating dirt or whatever is kind of weird. I don't know what to make of that yet per se. Obviously it's distressing to her. I'm distressed by it, so we'll see where that goes. But yeah, seeing the creepy guy with no eyes, and it's her specifically that sees him when she's making that press conference thing. I wonder if the timing of that and the idea that she was about to back out of something is relevant to like that triggering the memory of this mysterious character or ghost or demonic presence or whatever he may be. Is this just a memory of someone that got their eyes ripped out that she's seeing as kind of like a PTSD thing, perhaps? I mean, it's possible. So yeah, a lot of interest. But I'm just noticing, I'm looking at the IMDb cast list, Kevin's name is spelled with a Y. It's Kevyn. That is so weird, but fair enough. To be unique, be unique. But I guess what I'm really trying to sum up here, like other than just the mystery being a little more intriguing because they're adding some more layers to it now, and there's more of a hint of something supernatural or something sinister going on, and that horror vibes coming in. And I think the opening title sequence kind of adds to that sort of punk horror kind of feel that the show's kind of leaning towards the more it goes on. But it's just the general idea that like the characters are becoming a bit more sympathetic, and I'm caring about them a little bit more now that I'm getting to know them. Obviously, given us some of the backstory of some of the characters like Natalie, is good for that. But it's just the little moments where, like I say, Thaisa and Shauna like forming this bond because Thaisa tries to help her, and then Thaisa caring about her girlfriend, and then her ultimately dying, and like kind of what that's going to do to her, and the idea that no one wants to go with her at first, but then some of them kind of say, no, we should go with you. Not Misty, because she's got like a weird like motive, like the rest of them kind of heartwarming. Travis's little brother kind of like forming a little bond with Shauna as well, and she kind of gives him some paper and sort of talks about making a journal to help him get through things, and then he like carves her the little, I think it's a little wolf actually, funnily enough, out of wood with the knife, because it sounds a bit shady when he's looking for the knife and she's like, what's it for? And I'm like, do you really trust him to take the combat knife away? You know, maybe a bad idea. But sure enough, like he makes this little wolf thing, and it's actually quite a nice, sweet little gesture, right? You know, he's kind of like returning the thanks for her previous advice. And likewise, Travis, I think, is a lot more sympathetic after these episodes because it does two specific things with him. One is the relationship with Natalie, and kind of his, like, because he acts tough a lot of the time, but then it turns out he's actually quite shy when they get intimate, and he has some trouble performing in the most recent episode that I watched. And you know, like he's got some insecurities, but it's very kind of like understandable and relatable to a point, and it's kind of like we're getting to know him. And he felt like he was a dick to his little brother, and this is the second thing that it did, is like his guilt over what he did to his brother and like not really being there for him, you know, resulting in him going to find his dad's ring to give to him, was actually quite a sweet story. And it's the one, you know, and it ties into Natalie because Natalie helps him do it and understands why he's doing it, and that's what kind of partly appeals to her. So like a lot of the characters are kind of gaining some sympathy and gaining some, I think, just likability for the audience. And it's interesting that some of them are kind of doomed to some extent. Like Travis, we definitively know that he is dead. Jackie, obviously everyone's acting like she died, and she very possibly did. Part of me wonders, like, is she just left behind? Maybe, like, that wouldn't be like a shocking thing. Like, honestly, like if you ask me, like the big reveal of who's behind like the blackmail and like coming after them, like if you told me that's like actually present day Jackie who's coming for revenge for whatever, like, you know, whether or not they actually did something and chose to leave her behind or they inadvertently did so, if that's a revenge from someone like Jackie who is actually still alive, and again, like, you know, like the right show is her dying soon. I don't think they will do it anytime soon. I feel like Ella Purnell is like a main member of the cast. She's like third billed. I suspect that whatever Jackie's story in 1996 is, we're going to see it play out until near the end of the show, I assume. Which is actually, that's one of the other things, is we get to see a few scenes of like teen Jackie talking to Shauna. Shauna's kind of, you know, imagining speaking to her a couple of times. I think that stuff is again just building some, because one of the problems that I think I had with the first couple episodes is I don't know if I really latched on to any of the characters, and part of that's just maybe because there's a lot of them. It's a big ensemble. There's a lot of characters to get through, but the show, perhaps slightly to its detriment, was like heavily focusing on the dark tone that it was wanting to go for, because it wanted to build the intrigue. And while the intrigue was somewhat there, and it worked well enough at the time, it maybe did that at the sacrifice of making us like the characters first a little bit. Because I think, when I think of other TV shows, usually when you reveal at the end of episode 1 that characters are actually doing something shady or that they've done something bad, they want you to they want the audience to care about them and like them first, so that it's kind of a gut punch when you realize, oh shit, they've also done this, and now we have to process our mixed feelings about them. And I don't quite think the first episode of this did that, right? You know, at the end when it revealed that at least Misty, if not some or all the rest of them, were eating the human meat. I don't know if it kind of achieved this idea of like, oh no, like like what they went through was, you know, it always had this kind of dark brooding quality to it, like right from the get-go. And as a result, it was hard to almost buy in and start to care about the characters as quickly as that maybe you'd want to. And it took, I'd say, you know, 4, 5, 6 episodes to kind of start to really feel that with some of the characters, and really feel a sense of complexity, and to feel a sense of like, no, I don't want them to go through bad things. And luckily, I think it is getting to that point now. I think it, you know, by the point of episode 7, certainly the teen versions of the characters, I would say that about. The adult versions of the characters are a little bit different, in that they're kind of hiding whatever this is. And honestly, I was definitely on the side of like really preferring the teen versions of the characters. And it wasn't really until episode 7, with the 3 adults together and kind of like opening up and talking, without getting too specific because they're not revealing key details yet. It wasn't until they started talking to each other in the car in episode 7 where I really started to feel this kind of sense of history with them, beyond just some, you know, vague like phone calls here or there. It kind of felt like, because before, whenever they called, it was like we don't want to contact each other, and we're very cold when we do. Nothing felt kind of, whereas when they were together in that car and like they were talking about taking care of Natalie, or they were talking about stuff, it did kind of start to feel like there is some shared family experience here, some trauma where they're bonded in a way that is incomprehensible by most regular standards, because they've went through this together, and like they did survive it, you know, by one way or another. and I kind of felt that for the first time when they were together having those conversations. So the show's getting there. I would say, like I say, I'm into it more now after these 4 episodes than I was after the first 3, and I was still hopeful after those first 3, but I think it has improved as it's going on, and I'm curious to see now what happens with Thais's group. Do they just go back now after this has happened? The rest of them, I assume, might want to, because they're not so far that they can't make it back reasonably reliably. I would say they've only travelled for about a day or so, maybe 2 days actually by the end that push. So I'm fascinated to see where that goes. I complained a little bit about the relationship drama back in the first 3 episodes, and I'm still not necessarily in love with all of it, but it's that kind of weird thing where you start to care about the characters more, so it kind of doesn't hinder or feel as just straight up tropey as it perhaps did before. I think Shauna and what's his name, Adam, like their relationship was far more interesting once it kind of just was a thing, and it was starting to kind of reveal things about, like, things that she'd missed out on because of this Yellowjackets incident, and because and sort of started teasing things about her past through the nature of someone asking her questions, and through the nature of someone kind of like unlocking this part of her that she's kind of not had in a while, So those things coming out a lot more frequently and a lot more potently is a word I'd use. I think greatly enhanced my enjoyment of a lot of that. Not to say that all of it is necessarily like amazing per se, but there's enough in there that I'm definitely digging. Like I say, the adults together is definitely my favorite of all of the adult stuff by far. The stuff that they have individually works to various degrees to inform things about the characters, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the relationship with Kevin or the relationship with Adam on either character side is like that invigorating on its own. But it's just okay. This doesn't, everything has to be. But if I'm nitpicking a little bit, or I'm getting at stuff, that would be kind of like my breakdown of like where my enjoyment is coming from. So yeah, there you go. That's Yellowjackets. It's the middle of season 1. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I want to talk about. Thais's son, I should probably mention him a little bit. He seems to be having like these bouts of amnesia where he doesn't remember doing things. Like he's the one who paints the nasty message on the door of the house. He has no memory of it though, according to the psychologist. And what's interesting is that Thaisa dismisses this and says, like, is this all a sham just so that we keep going to her? But then it turns out that she has this. Like, this is exactly what she goes through, where she loses time and has done something without remembering it. Like eating dirt, for example. So it'd be interesting to see kind of more of like parallels and comparisons with that. And is this something that she has passed on to her son in some way? If this is even hereditary, I don't know. Which I suppose we can rule out the possibility, actually. We can't rule out the possibility that Thaisa herself is the one who painted the thing and then just put the paint under the kid's bed. That's not out of the realm of possibility. If she is losing time and waking up and like she's been doing stuff like unknown to herself, like that is it's on the table. It's on the table. This is kind of her other side, like acting out. Maybe her other side wants like the truth to come out and wants to be free and not have to hide, and all of the repression that is otherwise happening in general with the characters on this show. Maybe that's like kind of what that's getting at, and that's there's potential in that. I could see some fun. But no, it's good stuff. I am enjoying the show. I like it more after this middle chunk episodes than I did the first 3, which is promising for the final trio of episodes. And I'm no doubt I've missed some things, and I'm not talking about everything, but I I've been enjoying the performances still. Like I said, a lot of those emotional beats that they played off with the adult actors, or even some of the teen stuff. Sean and Thaisa during the attempted abortion with the wire from the bra is like, well, it was actually kind of hard hitting. Not obviously it's a really extreme thing to be doing, right? It's a really dangerous thing to be doing, but it kind of like Thaisa saying, "No, I'm not going to let you do this alone." It kind of like formed this bond between them. So it made me excited, like I said, for the two of them to see each other in the future and see what they were like much later, because it kind of feels like there is a friendship of some kind being formed there. So, no, good stuff. But yeah, that is Yellowjackets, and I look forward to more of the creepy shenanigans. Like I said, I mean, I probably glossed over the seance too, because the seance was kind of wild, and a show that didn't really have any supernatural stuff really before that scene. Like Lottie straight up like got possessed like she was a deadite. Like didn't start attacking anyone, but she started spewing French or something, and the Jackie's trying to translate with her basic French knowledge from class, and not going, it's all about blood, and is that what she said? Rivers of blood, I think, yeah, which leads to the water, which they theorize is something to do with minerals and it turning red because of the iron or something like that. Which not a ridiculous. No, I mean I don't know if that's even possible, but it sounded reasonable enough as a suggestion. And the compass started messing up in the last episode, which again, it's like there's a perimeter. It's like there's some sort of force holding them in there. I do appreciate that it didn't rush to the supernatural stuff, and that it's just kind of like, putting it in bit by bit as the season goes. It wouldn't surprise me if the finale, because the next time I talk to you about this, I'll be after I've watched the rest of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if the finale did do something very overtly supernatural, or very overtly teasing what's going on, so that when we hit season 2, we hit the ground running, where we've established, okay, this is the new rules that we're playing in now versus what we thought we were doing for most of season 1. So we'll see if I'm right about that, and I'll see how it feels when we get there. But that is the middle batch of episodes for Yellowjackets. I will see you probably in about a week for the last 3 episodes. So let me know what you think of the episodes that I've went through here. And like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. You can of course support all the content by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there monthly, or you can hit the super thanks button for a one-time donation on the video. And of course you can check out our Discord server. You get a link in that in the description. There's a subreddit as well if you want to go look at that, if that's how you like to get notifications. Or of course on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for notifications specifically for the Mail Fuzz TV YouTube channel. And of course check out Mail Fuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?